Short-term rental ordinance.
Yeah, this is something that council's been discussing for a while now, and there was an email that was sent April 30 to members of council that had attachments from it. It was from legal counsel. It summarized the conversation that took place in a public meeting in April, and it included what we all believed is the latest version of amendments that would permit short-term rental units. Both it would involve a zoning code amendment and an amendment to the property maintenance regulations, chapter 66. Those things govern licensing and inspections and those kinds of administrative matters with short-term rental units. To summarize, the issues remain the same. Basically, where do you want to permit these? And what sorts of conditions you want to attach to their approval. Right now, the draft ordinance considers allowing these by the conditional use approval process in the town center, NC1, NC2, NC3, and mixed use districts. Essentially, most of all of your residential neighborhoods in Westchester Borough. The standards would exclude student homes from being short-term rentals and would exclude short-term rentals from being student homes. You got to do it both ways. And for parking regulations, all districts except the town center would require one space per bedroom be provided, and that space can be provided off-site, provided there is an agreement that stipulates how that's supposed to work. And there are no required parking for short-term rentals in the town center district in the draft. And I should have started by saying a short-term rental unit is something that is occupied for 30 days or less. That's how it's defined in the ordinance. So the conversation, perhaps the committee would like to have a brief conversation about where they stand on where you want to permit it, if any of your opinions have changed since April. And I would also like to bring your attention to some analysis we did. I don't have an exhibit. I just sent an email to the council president and vice president about this, but we did a really rough, the question has come up, if we pass this, if council passes this ordinance, how many short-term rental units could possibly be created in the borough? And that's a valid question. So what we did is some very rough geographic analysis where we essentially tried to fit as many short-term rental units into the town center district, and then the town center plus NC2, and then the town center plus all the districts I just mentioned that are in the ordinance, with separation distances of 200 feet, and we tried 400 feet as well. So depending on if you want to limit the number of short-term rental units that could possibly be put in, a separation distance between short-term rental units is a legal way to do that. And we looked at a 400-foot separation distance in town center only. The maximum number that could fit into the entire town center district would be 50. And that is a really, really rough estimate. Don't hold me to that. And that is the absolute maximum that could possibly happen. And it's probably not a realistic number because we just did it with dots on a map. We didn't take into consideration where the buildings actually are located, where the properties are actually located. So my thought is the actual number in reality would be lower. We could do more analysis to get you a better number. Currently, as of today, we did a real thorough search of VRBO and Airbnb, and there's 15 short-term rental units operating in the borough right now. Just to give you an idea of what's going on right now. There's about 7,500 total housing units in the borough, and about 4,200 of them are rentals. Roughly 60% or so of the housing units in Westchester are rentals. Keep in mind that a short-term rental unit could be in a owned property or a rented property. There's no reason why someone who owns their home can't go on a vacation for a month or something and take advantage of a short-term rental ordinance and rent their own unit out. So you'd really be talking about this as a possible use for any residential property. So I share that all with you to say we looked into separation distances as a technique to limit the possible number of these, because we heard that as a request to look into last month. And that's where things stand right now. I'm hopeful we can have a conversation tonight and possibly next week and see if there's some consensus on a path forward.
Sean, what was sent over also had the other numbers in there. Do you want to read those out as well? For the rough estimated number of units if we allowed Town Center and NC2 and Town Center plus the other ones. You had, the chart had all three of those in there.
Oh, you want all those numbers?
I think it's fair to read them off.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so in the Town Center district only, if you had a 200-foot separation, that value is 185, and if with a 400-foot separation, the value is 50.
Okay, and the other two buckets you had in there.
And then the medium bucket, we'll call it, which is Town Center and the NC2 district. The 200-foot separation would generate a possible 880, and the 400-foot separation would generate a possible maximum of 220. The NC2 is a very large district. And then if you include all the districts, call it the big bucket, which is what's in the draft ordinance right now, a 200-foot separation. Now, keep in mind, this is just theoretical. This is just dots in the air. Would be 1,840, and a 400-foot separation is 440. So when you look at all these ranges of numbers, the biggest number I just said was 1,840, and the smallest number was 50. That's anywhere from 1% to 40% of rental units in the borough.
Thank you. So
I think the idea of using separation distance is a really effective and legal way to limit the number if you're looking for a way to do that.
yeah, and I'll start the conversation. Since our last meeting, a couple of things I've gotten more information. I've talked to Planning Commission friends of mine that are in other townships, and I've gotten more feedback from residents. I continue to get feedback from residents. Pretty much all the feedback I get from residents is that they do not want these in our borough. That's since April, that's all the feedback. I have not seen anything since April that says, I think these are great and we should have more. I didn't say none. I did see one maybe prior to April, but basically all the feedback I've gotten is that people do not want these. So looking at other ordinances as well, I talked to, like I said, friends in like other local communities. They do not have this available as an ordinance. Friends of mine, Lower Marion, it's only B&Bs where you have to have somebody there. And that was something that was talked about in our last meeting. As well, when these numbers were sent over this afternoon and I looked at them, I was like, oh my God, right? Like that's a lot, right? That could end up in our borough of these Airbnb, unmanned Airbnbs. And so that also was an interesting eye-opener to me. And so although I was thinking Town Center only at my last kind of weigh-in, I'm almost now leaning to none. Just let's not allow these right now. We're not ready. We aren't very good at monitoring our student rentals, and to layer in something like this, that there were a lot of great thoughts on how we could put regulations against them. But again, we're not good at monitoring our student rentals. And so for now, I'd rather us get better at monitoring our student rentals than try to put efforts towards both student rentals and monitoring these types of businesses, if you will. So that's my current state, my current weigh-in.
I think that those numbers are unrealistic. I don't think anyone would want to see 50 or 1,000. 15, we've been operating with for God knows how long, right? They may have been here for 10 years. They may have been here for a year. I have some concerns with saying we don't have the ability, or we're not currently managing student rentals adequately, which I think we would all agree with. but we need to fix that, right? We need to fix how we're monitoring, how we're managing them. We need to regulate, which is, again, what we had the conversation last month around regulating the number, the distance. I don't know that 15 is the right number. Maybe it's something less. But if we have 15 here, we need to figure out how we manage them and regulate them so that they are, continue to benefit the community. I don't think in the year that we've been discussing short-term rentals, we haven't had one resident come in and say, I have one next door to me or one on my block that is causing a problem. I have received personal conversations with residents in my ward, as well as emails, people in support of them. So there is I will agree with you, I've seen a number against them, but there are people that see the benefit from them and who are benefiting from them. I don't know that we're going to settle this tonight. I'm just going to be quite honest. We continue to talk about it for another, hours and hours. I think that this is something that has to go on to discussion next week. I'm not sure that we'll get there next week either. That's my position.
Well, last week, Mr. McGinnis gave us all the rules and regulations on if we allow the Airbnbs, how we should regulate their uses with insurances, inspections, how close they are to neighbors. He did an excellent job laying out what regulations we should use to govern short-term rentals, okay, which I applaud to him. I tried to use a unique method, and I was told I was wrong, which happens quite often during the day. I ask my wife something. I wanted to break down the short-term rentals in the wards that the council people wanted to have them in their wards. 1, 2, 4, and 6 either want limited or town center. And it's unique that they're all even numbers. And then 3, 5, and 7 want to have them wherever they need to be in the borough. The solicitor told me that we cannot use the ward system as a disembarkment on separating different types of activities in the borough. I thought it was a great idea. I gave myself a high five, but of course it's not legal, so it's not there. I'm still 100% sure that if we have them in the town center only, we could probably manage them pretty effectively. We'll put them on the same docket as the rest of the apartments that we inspect on a normal basis. The borough doesn't make any more money or any less money with these short-term rentals. It's the same fee, same rental fee, and the same inspection fee and the whole bit. So it's not like short-term rentals are like hotels for the borough, although I always equate them as mini motels in the middle of a block. Nicole has shifted to change her mind. Mr. Travis has switched to change his mind. But that still leaves 1, 2, 4, and 6. We haven't really moved very much. So nothing, again, has happened in government this week, as far as that's concerned.
Any comments from the public?
I will not beat the dead horse. However, I sent to all of council an economic analysis, and I just wanted to know if anyone had any questions with regard to that I could clear up.
I don't have any questions. And, I think if you're for it, you can find the data to support for short-term rentals. I think if you're against it, you can find the data to support data against short-term rentals. I appreciate you sending that and sharing that with us, Ms. Carroll. I did read it. Thank you.
I would love to know what the incentives are economically to support short-term rentals other than for the person running them who will not pay any earned income tax to us, nor will the inhabitants. One of the things that we did back since student homes have come up, back before that ordinance, we did an analysis of the effect of the growth and preponderance of student homes on earned income tax. And what we found was that in those areas that had a preponderance of student homes, the earned income tax intake based on block census, not individual names or anything like that, was very, very, very low. And that was the impact of that because young people don't earn income. For the most part, they're going to school or what they earn is not at the level. So that was part of that analysis. And I think that that's important. And yes, we have a lot of stuff coming in, but we have to live with that for a long time. So I would urge you to consider the economic as well as the very fabric of what it means to live in a neighborhood, which is where I started several months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, and come on up.
Mike Rhodey, Council Committee, thank you very for your hard work. I came into this a little bit late, guys, and reading up on this, and I understood your concerns, Nicole. I'm trying to find out, if you have 15 or so right now, is there problems with those 15? Have we had problems with that? Wouldn't it be a little better to document it and regulate it if you were to do this? And what's the concern not to figure out who's, not to regulate it?
Yeah, I think that was kind of where I sat in the beginning.
Okay.
But I think the issue is these 15 or however many have been flying under the radar. And yes, there was a complaint, and that's kind of how all of this
Yeah, I
came
don't follow
about,
if the police
started,
have-
right?
If the police are more
Yeah.
apt to go to these 15 places or not, I don't really know.
The concern is that once we allow them, then that 15 will grow. Like it starts out small and maybe a little bit manageable, but if we allow them, then it'll grow, and it goes back to then again, we are still going through growing pains, and we've got Sally, who's great. She's coming in. She's going to start really reinforcing all the student rental stuff and, kind of enforcing all that. But right now, and even Lisa
Right.
agreed, we're not there yet even for that. So to put all of these regulations in place, which there was a great list. It seemed, like a good list. The
Mhm.
problem is we currently do not have the infrastructure yet to enforce those regulations. So those regulations will just be paper-based, right?
Okay.
So until we as a community, as a borough are able to actually enforce those regulations, that's where I'm like, maybe we're
I
not
just think
ready
it's something that we
yet.
should
Maybe the
keep on the
future.
front burner
Maybe
because
we revisit
town
in a
businesses,
year or
it really
so.
helps. The restaurants and a lot of the small shops, when people come in, parents, families, and walk to town and spend some money. I think it really helps. But
So
thank
could you state your name and address?
Rhodey. My home address is East Bradford.
Thank you.
Mr. Rhodey, the fact that we have supposedly
Mhm.
15,
You think it's higher, Bernie?
supposedly, and I keep reiterating this, they are currently illegal. They are not allowed in the borough
I know that.
currently by our ordinances. I've been talking to the screen and this microphone for 2 years now,
Mhm.
trying to get the Building and Housing Department to spend an afternoon and find all the places
Okay.
and send them a cease and desist.
Okay.
And then you'll hear from them to really see if they really do exist, because we really don't know. Okay? So then we'll have a good list of what's
Okay.
going on. And by law, they're not supposed to be doing it anyway, because we're not inspecting the buildings. We're not checking fire detectors. We're not checking GFIs. We're not checking rear steps.
Understood?
We're not doing any of that. So, as Ms. Simone said, in order to find out who your competition is or your enemy is, you got to figure out who they are. So not that short-term,
15 doesn't, excuse me, Bernie,
Well,
15 doesn't sound too many to.
you don't know.
figure out.
Last month, we heard there were 60.
They,
15 are available.
gotcha.
So-
Oh, I see what you mean,
Yeah.
Nicole. Thank you.
Yeah, so we don't know.
Okay.
And our solicitor won't allow us to enforce the law
Okay.
until we have something in writing to enforce the law with.
Gotcha.
So, my tail's getting shorter and shorter.
Chasing your tail. That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
Yeah, I had a real long tail when I
Not
first
easy,
started.
guys. It's not
It's
easy.
gone. Yeah, it's pretty much gone because we're never going to all agree on,
Right.
there's four wards that say no or limit it and 3 that say yes.
All right.
So-
Maybe you started out as a trial thing with X amount of small units allowed to do it and see how that works. See if you have
That's why we talked about town
Yeah.
center, because it would be in direct competition with the 2 hotels.
Okay.
The people could get to the restaurants and park in our parking garages. There's no need for off-street parking.
Understood.
And all that good stuff.
Right.
To start in town center and stay in town center too.
And see how that
We
goes.
figure it out. But then what do you do with the ones up on Church Street and the ones up on Ashburn and the ones on my street in West Minor Street and the ones on Gay Street?
Running under the radar, you?
Yeah, they're all running on the radar.
Well, my answer to that would be you have an ordinance, in other words, town center, that's it. Then you go to your housing or solicitor, or whoever you just mentioned, and say, hey, they're outside our area. And I don't know what area the committee and you guys decide on. I'm just saying you have something to enforce at that point.
I totally agree with you.
So, I mean, I just appreciate all your help and time, and I
Yeah.
apologize. I'm coming in this very late.
No, we've been talking about this for a year, almost 2 years now. So
I'm back, Bernie. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
We got here because of a short-term rental that exists, right, on the edge of town center, and enforcement action. So not a nuisance or anything like that, but we realized that it was something that we had that we were not managing. And we didn't have an ordinance that supported it. And we needed to figure out, do we want to support it? It's already here. If so, how? Or were we going to just deny it altogether?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Robert Vosberg. I'm at 227 Sharpless Street in Ward 3. And it's a community, part of the community that sees a lot of transient residents, a lot of student housing, of course. I appreciate the significance and importance of having a robust town center. My family's been involved in a lot of businesses here in town. We lived in town, had businesses in town, but they go back a ways. You might recall Turizzi Beverage. That was my great-grandfather. You might recall the Vosberg Hobby Shops. That was the grandparents, parents, uncles, and so forth. I left Westchester and lived in a lot of other areas, including Old City, Philadelphia, where I served on the Old City Civic Association. And so I know the impact of transient residents. I know the delicate balance that you're trying to thread here of residential interests and commercial interests. But it's very clear that transit populations do have an impact on the quality of life in town. They'll place different demands on our civic infrastructure without any commensurate return for the citizens that are foregoing the services that would otherwise be entitled to them. I really appreciate the borough civic services. You know, we call code enforcement frequently, parking frequently, police frequently to deal with student population right now. I can only imagine that spreading that limited resource even thinner to deal with non-residents who are here having a good time, bachelor parties, or, you know, whatever the case is. It's just going to be a real strain on the population. I'm not really equipped to speak to the economics of the matter, but just as a resident, quality of life and the importance of knowing our neighbors and who they are, it means a lot to us in Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Could we review NC? What's the definition?
Their neighborhood districts, do we have a map that we can put up on the,
It's,
yeah,
oh,
Oh.
so not commercial. Thank you.
Oh.
Oh, I thought you wanted to see the actual sections. Does anyone want to see what that means?
Any young me.
Yeah.
So I'll take notes from this conversation and we'll take it to next Tuesday.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Our
Messick,
favorite conversation.
It
Yeah, we-
looks like I said, the even numbers outweigh the odd numbers on how to manipulate the conversation or work through the conversation. Yeah. It- So, whether we're getting closer to town, to me, listening, we're getting closer to the town center or no Airbnb, short-term rentals. So.
Yes, and why don't we post the zone map with our minutes, just in case anyone wants to check them out when the minutes are posted. We can put that up there too. But yeah, I agree with Bernie, what you're saying. We're moving closer and closer to either nothing or no, or town center only. Yeah. Okay, so affordable housing. We'll move to item B for discussion. I'll kind of frame this up. You know, last month we had a proposal that came forth to us regarding the Lot 10 in town. And as many of us know, you know, there was a lot of conversation about it, and we ultimately did not approve to move forward this proposal for affordable housing. It wasn't the right place and the right time and what have you. And there were a lot of things that weren't quite right. But along with that, it highlighted the conversation that needs to start happening. Let's talk about affordable housing before the next person shows up and wants a grant in 30 days. Like what can work for us? What are our options if we work to support putting some additional affordable housing in our borough, 1.8 square miles. So that's why this item is on discussion, and it's really just a matter for us to start talking through maybe what could be. There's no decisions to be made tonight. There's nothing. It's just, let's start brainstorming and thinking about what we could do to start to forward this initiative for the community. And Lisa, I'm going to, if you have, I know you have a lot of work that you've been doing in this, so I wanted to throw it to you to kind of start with maybe some ideas that you have.
Well, I don't know if I have a lot of work that I've been doing, but I am, I was intimately involved with the affordable housing that's been built over on Minor Street, the Pickney Hill housing that went up about 2 years ago. And I think last month I said that affordable, attainable housing is part of the borough's comprehensive plan, as well as the counties, and I'm sure it's in the state's comprehensive plan as well. But the borough has done little in that space. The affordable housing that that has occurred has been primarily done by private entities. So the Melton Center, for example, I believe the Mary Taylor House as well. Also affordable housing. And I want to be very clear that, there is a definition of affordable housing, and there is a perception that it automatically means low income housing. It is not low income housing. It is affordable housing, and it's based on the median income in a particular census tract. We have several census tracts, say that fast 3 times, census tracts in the borough that go from, below or at the poverty line to, very well off. I think I read recently that the median property value in the borough is $600,000. So the affordable housing, look, my daughter is a nurse, a BSN with a degree. She cannot afford to buy a house here in the borough. She can barely afford rent here in the borough. She got very, very lucky and found a place that was affordable. But she's making a good living. My son is making a good living. They are both educated. It's very difficult to find a place in Westchester to live and have any, semblance of a life or lifestyle. Affordable and attainable housing are for people who are making a living, trying to make ends meet. They are your police officers, although our police officers are paid very well here in the borough, some of the best in Pennsylvania. We heard from them tonight, the firemen and women, the ambulance, the emergency, emergency EMTs, the nurses. So it's something that I think we need to take very seriously as a community if we want to walk the talk and not just talk about it. If we want to be about it and be inclusive, we need to make it happen and be serious about it.
So just going back to, because I did ask for the definition and someone sent it to me between last month just to make sure that I had it. And it's that housing is affordable if it does not cost more than 30% of a family's income. That's considered affordable. Now, affordable housing is affordable to people whose income is no greater than 80% of the median income of the area. So if you're making 80% of the median income and the housing is 30% of your income, then it's affordable to you. So that's kind of the conversation that we're talking about. Now, what I don't know is the median income of the borough, and that's probably something we should know a little bit better about.
And it depends again on the census tract. So the census tract for Ward 1 is going to be very different than the census tract for Ward 2.
How would we, how would we want to talk about this? Do we want to talk by ward or do we want to talk by borough on, if we're looking for places in the borough to support this, are we going to say, well, if we put it in this ward, it has to be, the rent has to be this much, but if we put it in this ward, or do we just say, if it's in the borough, rent needs to be this? This is something we probably should think about.
My perspective, it's a borough comprehensive plan. It's not a Ward 1 or Ward 2 or Ward 3 or 4 or 5, 7. It's a borough comprehensive plan.
Is there a way we can pull the median income of the borough, like not right now, but like just to get that? Yeah, can we get that somewhere?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I was assuming the answer would be yes,
Yes.
but I did ask it in a question.
Very fair. Asked me for how we really stand as far as subsidized. Currently, we have 397. If they come available. The buildings. They can't afford. Stagnant, no one can get somebody to die. We have 9 complexes. We can protect Greenberg all the way down to Union Court Apartments. We do have opportunity for affordable. In our unified mixed use overlay district. Now that it is coming to see section Neo Commons on Market Street. And that was gardens down. The two partners right now. On the side street and on the side streets to be. The way the comprehensive plan states, clearly states, that There's an opportunity for affordable housing to be applied next week's program. Use of land must be on the frontage of the following streets: Market, Gay, Strasburg, Youngstown Pike. In order to do affordable housing, we have to start tearing down and doing redevelopment. And I don't see that happening in the real near future. The smart investors have gone around the borough and have secured any of the either contaminated or uncontaminated lots for market rate housing. And we have 4 of them on the books right now. And to Ms. Dorsey's point, in order to get into these beautiful apartment buildings are going to be built. Some of the names, like we name things by locations in the borough. Mitch's Gym, Burger King, Rubenstein's, and right across the street here, Adam Street, Knox. Okay. I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and they're all going to be market rate. And I don't know what market rate really means, other than I can't afford it on Social Security. So what's happening is we're becoming very affluent in the borough with our housing at $600,000. We have a chance to secure some affordable spots down on Hannum Avenue. I don't want these businesses to go out of business, but we have 3 gigantic warehouses that sit on Hannum Avenue that could be redeveloped if we can make affordable housing there. We have the American Grocer, the produce guy. We have 4 houses in the row on Hannum. Then we have Artillery Brewery, and we have Wrong Crowd. That's probably the last area, and they all face Hannum Avenue or Gay Street or Market Street. So they could be redeveloped into affordable housing in that area. So.
So I guess the question is, so what I'm hearing you say, Bernie, is that right now, the way the ordinance is written, that we only have the opportunity in this mixed overlay district as the ordinance is currently written. So if we wanted to, if we brainstormed at some point along the way and we thought, oh, there could be another spot that makes sense, we'd have to put something in the ordinance or ask for a special exception. I'm not sure what would have to, something, it's not necessarily precluding from other areas of the borough. It's just more so right now, it would be easier because of the current state of the ordinance.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I went around trying to find plots of land that could be redeveloped. And everyone knows the Spaz lot, which the borough uses to rent to the county. That corridor right there, if somehow the borough can define that, it can't be redeveloped unless affordable housing goes in that area. And that's in Ward 6 and in Ward 7. So it's away from the east end of town. It's in the opposite end of town. But you got to wait till businesses go out of business and somebody decides they're going to buy the properties. Like Ms. Dorsey said, the borough's not in the housing business. I don't think we could manage that very well. We can't manage short-term rentals. So, it's, somebody has to buy them and secure them as the word I'm coming to my mind is eminent domain, but that's not it. But we have to somehow get a lawyer to tell me what the right word is that you could do it. So I don't know how to do it.
Hold on. I'm debating, I guess, sure. And what are your thoughts?
And Carol, I just want to point out the irony between A and B. because affordable housing is not just apartment complexes. It really isn't. When I bought my house, I was a 25-year-old single teacher, and I'm teaching in a Catholic school. Lower that rate. And I bought a house, which we then had to rehab, paint, etc. Our housing stock are individual units of affordable housing. Why let investors come and suck them up for Part A? Talking about those two things and doing A, choosing to do A, and then crying that you have trouble doing B doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you. I can't disagree with that.
Two things can be true at the same time, right?
So I guess the other question is, one thing that came about was properties that are owned by other people right now, and that's kind of what you're talking about, businesses. I guess another brainstorming idea and things that I've heard along the way are there properties that are owned by the borough that make more sense than Lot 10? I don't know the answer to that. But what properties are owned by the borough that potentially aren't used as much or could be potentially reallocated, versus Lot 10. We talked about that and we were like, maybe not so much. But are there other areas in the borough that we own that make sense that we could sell, or this or that or the other thing, and kind of help support this initiative?
We do have one large piece of ground. I don't know if it's contaminated or not. It's on Snyder Avenue down by Goose Creek sewer treatment plant. The borough uses that as the borough dump or the collection agency for mulch and for chip wood and all that stuff. Sean, how many acres are down there? 20? 27 or 28 acres. But it's like being in the Vatican, okay? It's a city state. Snyder Avenue is in West Goshen. So to just draw an analogy, we would be putting affordable housing in West Goshen because that's where the property sits. But there's 27 acres there that we could develop and also build a new public works building as well. So it's possible.
We could put a public works building and affordable housing. What would happen to the public works building? Could
The
we
one on Lacey?
make that more affordable housing?
No, it's not big enough. Make that a parking lot for Aunt Carol. So
Where'd she go?
she left.
She's
She's had enough of me. That's,
that's something we should explore. What do you know about that
I think
space?
this is all good discussion. I don't know that, we're going to make a decision again tonight. But I bless you. I, would like to see the conversation continue because I think it's an important one.
I'd like to continue to open it up to those that are in attendance. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on affordable housing and maybe what could work in the borough and what we have available?
Just one person in line then?
you look like Dead Man Walking there,
No,
Tim.
Not everyone at once here.
Nobody's behind you.
Jim Shari, Chair of the Planning Commission. I just want to clarify a couple of things because I think it's in some part of this conversation, there's some conflating terms. I think it's important, precision in speech. And I think just as a starting point, our present ordinances, SAUDO, as well as zoning, is silent on the matter, but tax credit developments or subsidized housing or affordable housing is allowed anywhere in the borough, in any zoning district, as long as it's compliant with that zoning. So it's not, there's no present hurdles. It's not like there's anybody stopping or not allowing developers to come in. Most developments that are done, we call them tax credit developments now, there are a couple categories within that: affordable housing, workforce housing, and then above that is market rate housing. It's really a matter of how they're funded. So there's three subsidizing agencies presently. The federal one's HUD, the state is PHFA, and we have a county, Chester County Housing Authority. So we've done everything from small twins and triplexes and small little units to large ones like Penrose had proposed. So Penrose that had come in and put that proposal together, they're a for-profit company, and they're big players in the tax credit development sector. But I think most people would start off having a piece of property, whether there's a church there or anybody that had a piece of property, doesn't matter where it is in the borough. And so that's where the starting point was. I think that was like touching the third rail on that proposal. That touched the growers market, the parking demand, the giving up of an asset, the traffic, the density, the development, and so on. So I thought that was kind of a bad step forward, but I think there's opportunities here within in and around the development, the borough, to look at it. As Mr. Flynn had said, there's 9 developments presently. Certainly, even as a starting point, maybe revisiting those, see if they can be improved. I think it used to be that we would talk about how could we bring costs of housing down. So when people are saying affordable, sometimes they really mean, hey, I want the houses to be at $400,000 now, not $800,000. Or sometimes they're saying, no, I want a tax credit development. So, which is, both of them are fair enough of piece, but just to, try to clarify what that is. And so all of those can actually be true and can be worked on. But I thought Penrose was, it was just an unfortunate step. But I think we had looked at other opportunities that exist within and throughout the borough. And like Mr. Flynn said, ours was to understand where or what responsibility the borough had. They're not in the housing business. What are we actually talking about? Even when we're talking about attainable housing or inclusionary housing, that's a different umbrella. That's actually talking about looking at younger individuals that may not have down payments. Maybe that's that infill. That's where those ADUs or accessory dwelling units that we've just recently allowed. So that allows owner occupants to have a second unit, maybe above their garage, maybe for their kids to come back home, maybe an in-law suite. So that kind of infill housing provides something that's a little bit more proposed. The comprehensive plan asks that we increase owner occupancy. So there should be a lot of reward for owner occupancy. What Ann Carroll was not wrong when she said the short-term rentals or Airbnbs, that Airbnbs and investment properties like the student rentals, that actually drives the cost up. So it's fighting each other. So I'll just say 3 things that were most recently done: the EV ordinance, the Airbnb ordinance, and the rental ordinance. That actually drives and has a lot of bigger players or investors competing for those homes that younger people or older people want. At this time, when you look at somebody old who's been here for 40 years and they want to sell their house and they think, well, it just makes sense for me to sell my house. I don't have to take care of the property anymore. I'll just move over to one of the small apartments. And they find out the rent on the small apartment or what they pay for a year is more than what they paid for the house. That's a problem. So it is a real need, but it's very nuanced there. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Woody Lathbury. I live on South Matlack Street. I bought my affordable house in 1975. And has anybody talked to Diane LeBold about this? I know that she was looking at working with some church groups about doing affordable housing. I sat in on a meeting with her and Eli Kahn, and it didn't look promising, but she might have some insights.
Can I answer that? Sorry. So actually, this is where it all started, was under Mayor Herron. Diane Herron had, at the time, Diane LeBold was president of Borough Council, and Mayor Herron, it came out of that group with the Westminster, or the church, and they had a property they were looking at affordable. Diane LeBold was on the Planning Commission until recently. So that's where the inclusionary housing came from. That's where that whole push and drive, and it became really a county thing, and taking a look at the ordinance and proposing that. That was certainly addressing one need, but So Diane Lavold is in constant communication with us relative to it.
All right, Mike, come on up.
I don't know, but back in my day, you're still too young, affordable housing was living with two other guys in a condo, you know, so you can pay $300 each a month. Yeah, exactly. You had 10 guys in there, Bernie, come on. The tenants, what they pay right now, and I own the house, the rentals, it blows my mind. And when live alone, it's market rate is high. What affordable housing back in the day was if you can't afford to live somewhere, unfortunately, you can't, or you got to shack up or move in with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or just some friends. Now it's like, I would love to live in the best parts of Villanova, but I can't. And I know we're trying to solve a lot of problems here, but the woman who I think she's gone right now, bought her house, you know, on her Catholic teachers, she wouldn't sell it for that price right now. Westchester's done a phenomenal job in the last 20, 30 years, and the value has gone up. Could be like Detroit, where your value went down. But you guys, everyone has done a great job over the years. It's a tough situation, but these kids that come in, they don't want to live alone. They want to pay $1,500 a month on their own. It's expensive these days, right?
Thank you.
Brian McGinnis, Westchester Borough Council. I think the one thing that we as a council and we as a community forget is that the university year after year talks about how many students they have, and it's their largest class graduating or largest class ever. And there's not enough university housing. So what happens there is the oldest economic theory is it's a theory of supply and demand. And so that's why all these rents are going up, because landlords know that there is a demand because there's not enough supply. And the issue, what we need to do is work with the university and see how they're going to solve that crisis. Because locally, that is the issue that is impacting Westchester Borough locally. As far as all these other issues regarding short-term rentals and affordable housing and whatnot, I mean, we could look back from 2008 to currently the pandemic, to interest rates and inflation as to the reasons why there's not enough homes out there, because there's not. There's somewhere an estimated that we need 3.6 million to 7 million new homes in this country. So we're that far behind. So we have a supply and demand issue. But what's exacerbating the issue, I believe, is that we as a council and as a community are not holding Westchester University accountable for the amount of people that they let in every year, because every year it seems to exceed the year before. So, and unfortunately, it's our problem that we have to deal with.
To your point, Mr. McGinnis, as I mentioned last night, the university is going to put up temporary housing in their parking lot where their people park their cars. Over by Matlack Garage, they're going to be building a trailer park on campus because they have allowed too many children to come on the campus this year. And unfortunately, as far as Bernie Flynn is concerned, the university does not work hand in glove with the borough on any topics.
And I'm going to agree, and I'm going to agree with you on the revitalization of South High Street, in which case most of the people coming up and down High Street are university students. So I think, Sean, I don't know how much they're going to contribute to that.
Well, I asked last night that they wanted to put a bus stop, like in front of over here at the Melton Center over there. And the university didn't want anything to do with the bus stop that's going to house their students to get on the bus to go into Upper Darby. They didn't even want to even attempt to join us on the joint venture.
So I think that there needs to be a more stronger conversation with the university. The university needs to realize that, we have a mutual beneficial agreement between us. The university needs us. We need the university. But, you know, they need to do their part. They need to do their part with their own housing prices that they do have, because right now it's totally unacceptable and we're all bearing the brunt for it.
All right. Oh, come on up.
Hi. Everyone's so friendly. So I just wanted to say about affordable housing. My name is Jessica. I'm here for later part of the evening, but I got very excited when we're talking about affordable housing because I'm looking for affordable housing actively currently for my grandmother. And I feel like people sometimes forget that older people who are on fixed incomes, who may have worked their whole lives, need to be close to their families who might be in the borough or anywhere else to take care of them and are looking for affordable places as well. So just like as we're talking about all of that, I feel like there's a lot of stigma around affordable housing, but people also who have worked or are just on a fixed income for one reason or the other also need those resources. So I'm all for it. So that's all. Okay.
Thank you. All right, any other thoughts, comments?
I'm also here for.
You blocked the mayor, but that's okay. No. No, you're good.
So my name's Lindsay Smith. I live on South Walnut. And one thing that I've seen to be very successful in many other communities is an allocation of new development. And so for things like, Burger King, Rubenstein's, whatever it is, there's a percent allocation of affordable housing. This was super successful. It happened in my building in Brooklyn when I lived there. And it was just really great that when it was part of an ordinance, of course, there'd be more things to work through to get that in place. But that's just another perspective and idea for any new development that there's a percent allocation for affordable housing. It's been very successful in Minneapolis as well. Yeah.
Thank you. You're so
And that's a wonderful idea. The builders, however, don't think it's wonderful. But it would be wonderful if there was some way to have an ordinance to help them make it feel wonderful
Jim?
if they wanted to build in the borough. So that would be wonderful. I heard you say there's 9 places of affordable housing. And I would just like to hear them all, because I will start by saying do not include Union Court in it, because Union Court was sold last year for something like 14 million or more. And they immediately went to retail market rate rent. People who had lived there their entire life and paid the rent and only knew about renting at Union Court, the rent went from $1,200 in some cases to $2,700. So you had people looking for affordable housing. We had seminars trying to help these people because at Union Court, about 42% were vouchers and the rest were rent-paying people who had nowhere to go, and their rents doubled. And they were run by two young guys who did whatever the owner said do, and they treated those people disrespectfully. And the rent went from $1,200 to $2,700 and $1,200 to $2,200. So the only people that got to stay there were those people who were fortunate enough to have vouchers run by the Chester County Housing Department. So that's 8. And when you do the math, 1 is Denny Rayburn, senior citizen. 2 is senior citizen housing, because seniors need housing. So these aren't the people that we're talking about, the working people. Your children, my children, everyone's children here. Most of the people here who are 50 and older or 60 and older had the luxury of buying housing when it was truly affordable. A fixer-upper that costs $487,000, they're moving elsewhere. The median home, I think it's $487,000, something like that. And that's medium, So That's not, you know, just move-in condition. But you have Maple Court, you have Denny Rayburn, you have Mary Taylor House. That's 3 of the 8. So now you're talking about 5 other places that might be affordable housing. That's Hannum Gardens, that's Locust Court. Who else are you including? That's senior citizen, please. Church Street. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's private housing. That's not affordable housing. That's private housing at a market rate. So you have 5. You have 5 that are for everyday working people. The other 3 or 4, really, the other 4 are senior citizen housing. People who are retired, people who are looking to spend their last days somewhere comfortably, near their family, near a place they worked all their life. So it is a pressing issue, and we do thank you, Nicole, for having the conversation. And I would agree with you. It's a conversation we need to continue. You know, all these great minds need to come together and figure it out, because I think every problem is solvable. It won't be a quick fix, but I thank you for continuing the conversation, and let's continue to have it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap up this conversation with the wise words of Mayor DeBaptiste. And we will move on to the Rec Fee in lieu, Saldo, and zoning ordinance amendment recommendation.
Want me to lead? Okay. Yeah, I guess we were the Planning Commission, again, Jim Cherry, Chair of the Planning Commission. We were tasked with 4 different ordinances to revisit. So as a starting point, these ordinances already exist. So we're talking about making amendments or just refining those or clarifying the intent of some of those ordinances to take place.
And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but
Worries.
I want to thank you and the Planning Commission, because yes, we tasked you with these 4 things. And tonight we're going to talk about not only this one, but another one that you've worked on as well. So thank you guys for taking that task and running with it. So
Our privilege. Yep, certainly. I think just to step back, some of the more recent larger developments, there were some areas of negotiations and maybe interpretations relative to the existing ordinances regarding the recreation space or the fee in lieu of recreation space. So as that starting point, really when it boiled down to it, it was the recreation space as it presently exists in the ordinance was required to be public recreation space. It could be passive, could be active. But making it public and having the opportunity or the ability to have that dedicated was actually the little bit of I got you with relative to areas such as rooftop courtyards, because they weren't necessarily attached to or directly adjacent to a public way or sidewalk. So I'll just use Chestnut Square as an example because it's a beautiful courtyard. But the average individual walking down the street's just not going to make their way up into and then enjoy the courtyard within Chestnut Square. So as a starting point, look back through and again, trying to understand different definitions and looking at, again, terms that were conflated: common space, designated space, open space, public space, green space, and so on. These terms were used interchangeably. I think when we looked at common space and designated open space, one of the pieces we saw was it was designated, intended for use, enjoyment by the residents or by the people that use those properties. So as we stepped down in types of housing, when we got to the apartments or the multifamily units, it was all of a sudden public. So that didn't seem necessarily equitable. I think if you're renting in these apartments, and certainly for the amounts of dollars, that there's a sense of privacy, security, and ownership that one should be able to take within the property. At the end of the day, there's a piece within subdivision and land development, reduce the possibility of borough becoming overburdened with the development and maintenance of many very small, randomly planned, and widely separated rec spaces. So as we're looking at this thing and looking at other municipalities and how they've handled it, does the borough really want to have these small little 100-square-foot areas spread out through the borough that they're in fact then required to maybe maintain? And I don't know necessarily how many there are that have been dedicated, but the thought there was, again, take this ordinance, you've seen how many pages were edited, there's probably 20 or so, and try to simplify it down so that the applicant understands what they're expected to provide and the borough understands what they're going to receive. So it was basically, if all this is to run around and negotiate and get a fee, why don't we just ask for a fee? Why don't we just ask for a fee? And that fee could be established by the borough. And then secondly, that 5% rec space that we're requiring on multifamily projects, it doesn't have to be dedicated. It could be private. So then it can be courtyards. It can be internal to the site. It could be anything from an active to a passive type of recreation space. But it's really then the burden of the owner or of the property. They're going to have market-driven decisions anyway. If they want amenities on the property, they're going to provide amenities on the property. So it's not something that has to be, you don't have to make somebody do something well if they want people to actually show up and receive there. So this edits that you see and what we've done with the SAUDO and the zoning ordinances was just to simplify that down, simply ask for a fee based on number of units or square foot of built space, as well as require a 5% recreation space, but not necessarily is it required to be have the ability to be dedicated or turned over to the borough, but could be something like a courtyard.
Well, thank you. I'll open up to my counterparts. Thoughts?
I would be in support of this. It makes it very clear and concise. There's no questions and, negotiating around what is public space versus private space, a court. This cleans up the code, makes it a lot clearer, and I think will help drive some of the development that we have seen recently.
And there's a requirement on green space that's just to be held as a minimum.
Thanks, James.
Okay.
It was well done.
Okay.
The biggest thing that everyone had concerns about when you talk about public space is that everyone thought that they could go in and go swimming in Eli's pool because it's public space, right?
Right.
And if you clean up the definition of what public space is and how it works out, which you've done, it makes it much more easier to people say, well, we're really not getting any public space. The only public space that we've gotten recently, which is phenomenal, is 44 West. And that's turned into the center of Westchester Borough downtown. And Eli and his team did a phenomenal job there. And it's used every day for all the different purposes. But still alone, it's a private space that he's allowing the borough residents at his cost, because he power washes it once a month to keep it clean and keep it tidy. That's the quality of a developer that you can look to.
Agree. Beautiful
Thank you.
space. And then just to clarify, the rec fee would be allocated to the parks and recs. So we'd like the Barclay to be added. Right now it's Everhart, Marshall, and Horace Pippin. I'm not sure that presently it includes, but should include Barclay. What we're looking at additionally is the planning commission would like to see a percentage of those funds or fees go to the Shade Tree Commission. So we're looking at the ability to expand the definition of recreation space. So if we look around the borough and understand what recreation is, the bulk of the people we see walking their dogs, jogging, biking, extends beyond just those parks. So the recreation space provided on those sites will relieve and take some burden off the public parks. But also, so that was just a thought, and that's what we're trying to continue doing to see if we can green up the borough itself.
I'd like to see that rec fee be applied to all the parks, not just the ones that were named. There are some parks in the borough that need some TLC and have been neglected.
I agree, especially, we're working through this plan, and I know that all the residents, if you ask, have ideas for the parks that are near them. And so being able to use a rec fee for any park is a good
Sure,
idea.
sure.
Oh. But I
That's-
also,
that's the intent.
I think it's a great idea. I think the question then is also, how do we calculate the fee in lieu, right? We have a calculation that we currently use, and it's, I don't know, 10 years old or something like that. Like, we need to figure out a new
Yeah, and then
calculation.
that was the basis of why I mentioned those particular parks, because that was what the original fee was. I think it's around 1,500 per unit and around 80 cents a square foot for built space. But again, that's something that can be arrived at and understood what it can feed. It's just a matter of us cleaning this up to make it simple. So, and the borough council can decide where it goes within Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Okay.
But the fee was established. I don't know if Sean, if you have that formula, but
Yeah, so Sean, if we wanted to update the fee in lieu calculation, what would be our next steps for doing that? Okay. Oh, we did get an estimate though? Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, let's, if you can have that for the work session or meeting to discuss as part of the discussion, right? Cool. So we'll move this as discussion for the work session? Yeah, all right, sounds good. Again, thank you. Okay, the next item is, I didn't open it up to public comment, sorry. Anybody have any thoughts that they wanted to share along with this? Okay, all right, so now we will move on. Chapter 37, keeping poultry and hogs, 37-3.1, I don't have my glasses on, exception.
Well, let me take this one real quick because it's not, I'm guessing you all aren't here to hear about chickens and hogs. You are not allowed to keep pigs in the borough. So even though the chapter of this ordinance is hogs, you can't keep a hog in the borough. You can't keep a rooster in the borough either, but you can keep egg hens, up to 6 of them on borough property, but you have to build the coop 10 feet away from a side property line. And so the map that we're showing here, we did an analysis and we showed the building setbacks and property setbacks, all of that blue area. It's not blue on the big monitor because our RGB is different. It's blue on the side monitors. Those are areas the chicken coops can go in. We have 2 current chicken coop permits in the borough active. If you want to expand this to more areas of the borough, I would suggest the other pathway to go is to reduce the coop setbacks to your other accessory buildings, which I believe are 3 or 5 feet, depending on what district in. Therefore, if you wanted to keep chickens, you could put them as close to your property line as you could, a shed or a garage or some other accessory structure. Right now, you have to put it 10 feet away, which means smaller lots that may only be 20 or 24 feet wide in the borough, of which there are many, can't currently keep chickens. So I want to break it down to boil it down, the easiest decision you can. There's the do nothing option, which is to say we've got enough spaces for chickens as is, or take it down to the accessory building setbacks, and that would make it more available to more
More people
potential-
that want chickens.
more people that want chickens.
It's a small lot.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to, we had the woman a month ago that wanted to keep chickens. And so my question for you, just to clarify in my head, is if we do this accessory building, will she be able to have her chickens? So I'm all for a responsible chicken owner. I also am for pig owners. Pigs are actually cleaner than dogs, and from what I know, but that's another day. But yeah, I would also be for responsible chicken ownership. And I'm a vegetarian, so I'm still for it.
I'm not allowed to have them, so whoever gets them is good.
It's a long, narrow yard. And if her chicken coop is in the back of her yard, it butts up against an alley and there's nothing around for her. That doesn't mean for everybody. It makes sense to me to align with the accessory, the ADUs.
So, yes, yeah. Yeah, for the fee in lieu, are we discussing with a recommendation or are we just discussing next week? Going back to that one. Okay. All right, yeah, so let's do that same thing with the fee in lieu. Yeah, so we're making the recommendation too on that one. Line with setback. Any public comment? Chicken lovers, non-chicken lovers, hog lovers, yeah. Horses. All right. As seeing none, we'll move to the action items portion of our agenda. A, motion to consider final land development approval of 611 East Neal Street, Wyeth property warehouse proposal.
Good evening. Can you hear me? As the committee is aware, this application was approved by Borough Council for preliminary land development approval back in October of 2022. The applicant is 611 East Neal Street LLC. This is for the development of the East Neal's Industrial Center, where the applicant proposes to develop the property with 2 industrial buildings totaling 523,653 square feet with related landscaping, stormwater management facilities, and other improvements. The deadline for final land development approval is at the end of the month. I do see the applicant here tonight. Counsel for both sides, for both the borough and I believe, and the applicant is not here tonight. They both will be present for the work session later this month.
Okay, so do we have any recommendations or additional details that you guys want to provide us as we talk through this?
Yeah, I think that right now the legal counsel for the borough is Michael Crotty, because we had to use conflict counsel in this case because this borough solicitor is also the solicitor in West Goshen Township, and West Goshen Township had some issues with the land development, so our solicitor had to recuse themselves. So Mr. Crotty is preparing a final plan resolution for council to consider that will reference the consultant review letters. And those span everything from landscaping, stormwater management, building design, lighting, everything that falls under the ordinance and regulations. Our continuing outstanding item that we continue to have discussed with the applicant is the need for, or potential need for, traffic improvements having to do with the truck traffic that is going to be generated by the new use. Currently, the applicant doesn't know what the tenant is going to be, so they make a presumption that there is a tenant that is a warehouse land use, and a warehouse land use generates a certain amount of trips per day. And right now, the estimates that went into the traffic study were around 314 trucks per day on average going to the site. That works out. And there are peaks during the day of that and valleys of that truck traffic. So there could be times a day where there could be 10, 15 trucks coming, 20 trucks coming per hour. Our concern remains that when you put the 53-foot trailer turning templates on some of these turns into the site, both on Bolmar and around the corner of Adams Street and Nields, you have those trucks having to go either into the shoulder to make the left-hand turn into Bolmar or into southbound traffic on Adams Street to make the turn onto northbound Adams. I just remind also that council and people listening to this, that this, the applicant also received a variance, I believe, from the variance, right, from the zoning hearing board to have less than three entrances on Bolmar Avenue. And part of those conditions of approval dictated specifically how trucks were supposed to enter and exit the site, accessing both the north and south warehouses shown on the plans. So that's why we can get real specific about truck turning templates and make comments about potential conflicts happening. So we would like to continue that conversation with the developer on that topic. And the other sort of hanging topic out there is that should the type of user change in this 500,000 square foot warehouse space, for instance, if it were to go to light industry or manufacturing, the travel demand could go up significantly. And at that point, the borough can require the applicant, and this is in the approving resolution, to do a post-occupancy traffic study and then make any improvements that are needed to manage the extra traffic that could possibly be coming to the site. The applicant has also agreed, and we'll go over this on Tuesday, to post financial security to make that happen at some future date. And I'm sure if I'm saying something wrong, they'll correct me tonight, but we'll have a more thorough conversation about this next week. So we're working with our engineering team at this time to determine what that number should be. It doesn't need to be decided in time for the final plan resolution and consideration by council. So that's really where things stand. I think our main issue remains, can the roads around immediately adjacent to the site accommodate the turning geometry of 53-foot trailers in and out of the site?
So I guess I'm confused. It's an action item, but I don't feel like I have full information to make any kind of recommendation, right? You're saying there's a list that the lawyer, the solicitor's working on that we don't have tonight. There are concerns or things that you guys still want to work through with the developer with regards to truck turning. And there's also, although you're saying it's not an impact, right, that it can be done later, but there's a financial security question of what that amount should be. And I guess that's still a question, because if nothing's signed or if nothing's moved forward, that's leverage. And if we're like, oh yeah, you can do it, I mean, that's less leverage. So I don't know what we're supposed to do here as an action tonight based off this information.
Knowing that there's some facts that need to be figured out, the committee could forward it to, we will discuss it next week and Tuesday. Perhaps the committee has no recommendation then, approval or otherwise, or denial.
So it would go to the working session for discussion next week?
Session.
And do we expect to have additional information at that session?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Any comment from those in attendance? All right, well then we'll discuss it further next week. All right, item B, motion to consider attendance of solicitor for zoning hearing consideration proposal for daycare center at 1 South Brandywine Street.
I'd like to maybe take a couple minutes to set the table. Could I have a show of hands of people who are interested in comment, came here tonight to talk about? Okay, thank you. I thought that was the main show.
Tonight's the hot topic.
This matter is going to appear before the zoning hearing board on May 20th of this month. So in a couple weeks, or less than a couple weeks, there'll be a hearing. And that hearing works like a judicial proceeding. In other words, the board sits at the meeting and it hears evidence, and the evidence gets entered into a written record, and the board makes a decision, a very narrow decision based on the relief the applicant is looking for, based upon the evidence that they hear presented to the board, both by people who might be for it or people who might be against it. Clearly, the applicant in any zoning hearing case is going to be for their application. Why would they be there? And anyone who has interest in this application has the ability to go to a zoning hearing board and ask the zoning hearing board for standing to submit information and evidence in the proceeding. And it's only in that case that you can affect the outcome of that zoning hearing board proceeding. What we're doing tonight with the committee is trying to make a recommendation if Borough Council wants to direct its legal counsel, the Borough Solicitor, to appear at this hearing on May 20th and provide testimony to the zoning hearing board on the case. And I'll cut to the chase. Our recommendation would be to do that based upon our analysis so far and understanding of the case. I just want to set the table because for everybody who's in the room, we're not going to this isn't a moment for evidentiary proceedings, but the zoning hearing definitely is. And anybody who, for instance, is a neighbor or has some other interest to the property can appear at that hearing and most likely be able to testify.
Come on up.
Thank you and good evening. I was here 2 months ago. My name is Ryan Jennings. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, Chris and Shannon Mandine. As the committee might recall, we met some resistance the last time we were here publicly, and we decided to take a step back in hopes of taking steps forward. And we feel as though we have taken adequate steps forward, whereby the request tonight, despite hearing what the borough administration's recommendation is that the Smart Growth Council does not direct legal counsel to appear at the scheduled zoning hearing on May 20th for purposes of opposing the special exception relief and the variance relief. We understand that there's a pending appeal, and that's kind of separate and apart. But what we are interested in, and we think that we've already made this demonstration through a very transparent process. We've produced a traffic study, we've produced an impact study, and I'm going to adhere to the borough's wishes of not providing any of that evidence or testimony or legal argument tonight. I'm really not interested in getting into all of that. I do understand and appreciate that the proper venue for that is before the zoning hearing board. What I would like to point out is last time there were a number of issues and concerns that were legitimately raised by neighboring property owners, many of whom are here this evening. Over the course of the last approximate almost 2 months, me and my clients have taken tremendous steps to keep the channels of communication open. We've made outreach. I've spoken to legal counsel. I've spoken to neighbors. I know that my clients have done the same. Some of that has been met with acceptance. Some of that has been met with resistance, not wanting to talk to us, which is fair and that's their right. But what I will say is there were concerns about noise, use or access of the private access drive that adjoins this or separates this property from the townhome community. There were concerns as far as what's been labeled on the plan as a new trash enclosure or trash pad. So we attempted to dispel those rumors last time, both at the meeting and after. But I do want to bring to everyone's attention that there will be an outdoor play area. It will be fenced. This is a proposed operation for just 10 children, ages approximately 3 to 6. There is no dumpster being used or proposed to be placed at this property. There will be normal trash cans for a normal commercial small scale use. They will be screened with vegetative buffer, as is the situation today at the subject property. That access way, that private drive that the public at large does not have a right to use, we readily acknowledge that. We acknowledged that almost 2 months ago. My clients have instituted a process and a proposed procedure by which parents of the daycare use would be notified and required to sign off that they acknowledge that they would not be able to even enter into that private drive or that driveway, we'll call it. There would be an employee stationed there at pickup and drop off to ensure that that access drive is not used. If the neighboring property owners are interested in a cone or a flag or a gate or something, we are open to those discussions and those potential resolutions. We've openly met with borough staff. We've met with council members. We've opened the doors to that space, to that commercial accessory structure, because we are trying to be open and transparent with what we're proposing. I don't want anyone to be surprised by the evidence or testimony that they're going to hear 2 Mondays from now at the zoning hearing. So, that aside, I recognize that many people raised their hands indicating interest in tonight's agenda item 4B. So I'll stop talking at this point, and I would love to hear from the neighboring property owners. I would love to hear from those that are here presumably in support of the application. I think that that's probably far more important than me blabbering on at this point. I do want to just reiterate what the request of the applicants are, and that is simply, please do not make a recommendation to the Borough Council to direct the borough's solicitor, legal counsel, to attend our hearing for purposes of opposing the requested zoning relief. It is special exception, and we're going to satisfy that criteria through our testimony, through our evidence, but we really don't, I mean, there's already plenty of neighbor opposition, as it is, which we're anticipating will not just go away overnight. So I think it would be probably a waste of borough resources. I don't think that, the criteria of the ordinance is very objective, and I maintain that we satisfy that criteria. So that's the ask of the applicants tonight, despite the borough's staff recommendation. So at this point, I'm happy to hear from anyone.
Mr. Jennings, good evening. This is the first time I'm involved in this type of situation because I've never been on zoning before. I've always been in charge of money, and I love money. But I don't expect my solicitor to go there and sit on their thumb when they're at the zoning hearing board. I would expect the solicitor to speak accordingly to the statutes or ordinances and resolutions of the borough to protect the interest of the borough, to make sure that the applicant follows the necessary guidelines. And if you think speaking out against the plan, I can't condone that statement, because I expect our solicitor to go there to make sure that the other 20,000 people that live in the borough live by the same rule. And I don't expect her or him to not speak up. So asking to not oppose, I can't support that. I want them to be able to talk freely, to go on the record to make sure that the borough's position is extremely understood. And if that comes to opposing, I'm using your word because I don't know what that means, opposing, other than saying that they don't want it. I want our solicitor to make sure that they do the right thing for the residents of the borough. That's all.
Yeah, and just to address that point, and that's all very fair. I'm not asking that the solicitor not be, authorized to attend. What I asked back in March and what I'm asking here again, and the borough's position and its legal position, from the best I can glean, is, I don't want to call it ever changing, but I think it's fluid. And I don't think that determination has been finalized. And I think that there's still open communications in that regard. But what I will say is a solicitor can attend a public hearing for purposes of merely monitoring the application. And that doesn't mean that they're being paid to just sit on their hands. It means that they're being paid to monitor the situation, to see how the testimony and the evidence unfolds before them, and to make a determination to protect, as you're suggesting, the constituents of the borough of Westchester. So I'm all for that approach. But what's important is the directive that that solicitor's office receives from the borough council. And is that directive, go and monitor the application and advocate for the imposition of reasonable conditions which can be imposed should the ZHB approve the application. We would be completely fine with that. We anticipate that if this thing is approved, there will be reasonable conditions imposed that restrict hours of operation and how many children can attend and, you know, what pickup and drop off looks like, and that there should be non-use of that driveway. So those are the kinds of conditions that we anticipate and I would welcome. But what I don't want is outright opposition to the appellate portion. I wouldn't want outright opposition to the special exception. I wouldn't want outright opposition to the variance request. And I know you're chuckling because you're saying, okay.
Yeah, I have to interrupt you. That's like saying you don't want me to use my playbook on the goal line of the Super Bowl. The solicitor should be going there to make sure that, and Mr. Metric, if I'm wrong, or Ms. Slook, am I wrong? Speak up. They're supposed to go there and make sure that the borough gets a fair shake on following the zoning, correct? And the ordinances.
The borough can be heard, and they would be heard by the solicitor. They would have a right to provide testimony and evidence. And I'm not trying to ask that they go and not be permitted to participate. What I'm suggesting is they go and they not. There's multiple dimensions to this application and appeal. And what I'm saying is it's the applicant, it's my client's burden to demonstrate. It's my client's burden to demonstrate the satisfaction of that objective criteria for special exception and variance. And what I'm asking is if my clients can satisfy that criteria, which they carry the legal burden for, that the borough solicitor's office does not stand in the way and instead defers to the borough zoning hearing board, who's serving in that quasi-judicial capacity, and then asks that reasonable conditions be imposed for the protection of all of the neighbors. And that's what I'm asking. And I don't think that you're understanding the complexity of the process.
Well, I've learned tonight a word, layered. Thanks, Chris. That's why I told you that out in the vestibule, I can't make a determination on this thing one way or the other because, as I learned tonight, layered is a very good word. That if you scholarly solicitors can't figure it out, in a room, we can't figure it out. So that's why we would expect our advocate, who would be the borough solicitor, to make sure that the advocate makes sure that things are being done for us because we don't understand it. And if she needs to speak up or he needs to speak up, they need to do that. So thank you.
That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Chris.
and my understanding right now, this is my understanding, is that if the solicitor is there, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the solicitor is there, they're not going to talk about like how many diapers could or could not be in your trash can, right? Like that they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, then I want to know what we're doing here. My understanding is that they're there to advise on the code and what the code says and where there are nuances that you are adhering to the code and you may not be adhering to the code, and to help clarify that. My understanding is if we send the solicitor, we're not sending someone in opposition. And if that is the case, I'm not sure I want to send somebody just to oppose it, but I do kind of comprehend the idea of sending someone to help talk about the code if a question comes up, right? But I because my personal opinion, and unfortunately that's I like the idea. I think it's helpful for the community. I don't see we let all these big guys build all these big buildings and everything. And all you guys want to do is have a daycare for 10 kids. I like it. you know, if I had to vote, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. But then there's the layer that we have to think about. And that's where, you know, again, if my opinion counts, yes, which I guess it does because I'm sitting here. But no, I don't want the solicitor to go there and say, we don't want this. I want the solicitor to answer questions and hopefully work with you guys so that you can get it over the finish line.
Thank you.
That's-
And that's the exact ask that I attempted to articulate on multiple occasions. I mean, and that's a distinction between Mr. Flynn's position and yours, what you just described. There's two different things that the two of you just described, and the Borough Smart Growth and the Borough Council can vote in either of those two directions. So there is that possibility that Mr. Flynn could vote that way and you could vote the other.
And I'll break the tie. I'm with Nicole, right? We want to due process and we want to make sure that, you know, the code is followed, that we're fairly represented, and all the things that Nicole said. I'm not sure what we're debating right now.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess public comment.
Lindsay Smith. I live on South Walnut, and I moved to the borough just for the community. I grew up here, came back during the pandemic, and now I have a 9-month-old daughter. And the one thing that is so clear to me is you look at the Westchester Moms Facebook group, and it is just comment after comment of like, oh my gosh, I can't find a daycare. I need childcare. It is my current anxiety for when my daughter reaches an age of 3, hopefully, and is able to attend this incredible childcare facility, because looking at what this offering is just so exactly what I would want for my daughter. And you look at the distribution of businesses within the borough, and it does not lean childcare at all. It is one thing that being a solo mother by choice as well, childcare is so critical to me, and having that within the borough, having it accessible is something that would just be absolutely game changing. And the first people in the community that I would turn to for a recommendation for a childcare facility are also Shannon and Chris, ironically enough, not ironically, very much in line with what we are all here for. So I know there are many other comments. I will leave it at that so I can go relieve my babysitter, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marissa Tribbiani, and I'm also here on behalf of the Boulder Kids, which is going to operate this child care center. And just clarify, I think we're talking about a little bit older kids. Marissa Tribbiani. So Boulder Kids, if you don't know anything about it, it's a community-based preschool. They have built relationships with the people in this community like you would not believe for a preschool. We, in the last 3 days, have gone to the local businesses that these teachers have taken the kids to, and I'm happy to give this to you. And the kids have interacted with these businesses. They have done wonderful things because their teachers have walked them into town to learn, to nonprofit organizations. They've brought rainbow vegetable soup to Safe Harbor. They've done food drives. They've gone to Goodwill Fire. They've gone to the senior center and sang Christmas carols. And they're raising good citizens that want to come back, and hopefully their whole lives, they will be borough citizens. And so they're just really teaching kids to be thoughtful about their community. And the primary reason we selected this school for our kids was to develop this sense of community and to get them into town and seeing real life things, which is really important and you don't see a lot. And I would say as a result of Boulder Kids, I, who am not a resident of the borough, I own a property here, but we live in Thornbury Township, Chester County. We come into the borough all the time because of our relationship with Boulder Kids. If my kids want pizza, there's 50 pizza places that are 5 minutes from my house, but we're going to Spear's Pizza because my kid has interacted with Spear at Westchester Pizza 800 times, and that's where she wants to get pizza. We've made donations to Safe Harbor and the senior center, so it really does bring more people in. And lastly, I'll just say a community-based education center is one of the most attractive and compelling uses I could possibly think of for this building. Families need more childcare, that's high quality. The Boulder Kids are active in their community, and it's really a wholesome and it's not a disruptive use with reasonable conditions put in place. So we just ask you that you be supportive of not opposing the solicitor or having the solicitor oppose this measure. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Bryn Bernier. You might have gotten an email from me yesterday, but I just wanted to say something. My daughter started at Boulder during the pandemic, 2020, when kids were being sheltered at home. I might cry because these two women treat my children like their own, but that's not why I'm up here. Um, I, uh, well, all right, forget it. I don't think the boroughs, I just counted. It's got 17 tattoo parlors. It's got 7 vape shops. That's 23 adult vice, whatever, what have you. There's only 11 daycare / childcare, or this is actually isn't really a daycare. It's more like a preschool centers in all of like walkable Westchester. And I know that there are hoops you have to jump through, but I really urge you to keep that in mind because, you know, we really don't, I feel like we're kind of losing sight of like what makes this community a community. And also in the same vein, I would like to say, you know, it's kind of interesting. We're talking about affordable housing and affordable everything. Boulder Kids is less than half of what like the Goddard School is. For my child to go to school for 4 days a week for 6 hours a day, it's $900. The same tuition at Goddard School would be close to $3,000. So, and I know just from experience with other people how much they pay. Boulder Kids is very, very affordable. I mean, it is maybe everyone I tell, they're like, oh my God, that's insane. So they really are keeping their costs down because they don't want to gouge. These 2 women dig out of their pockets every month. We try to have fundraisers and they won't accept it because they want to be fair. And they want to open this next center so that they can just continue the fair. They're not trying to gouge. They're going to keep their prices down. And, you know, Shannon is, you know, could easily, you know, rent to someone who would pay more, but she's, again, charging them a very low rent because she believes in Boulder Kids' cause. And again, it's accessibility. And so, you know, I just thought that was apropos to what we were talking about. But I just think you should know about the character of these women, but also the fact that like this is not a money-making venture by any stretch of the imagination. And it's, you know, they're raising good citizens, and there's nothing that is bad that is going to come out of this place. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for your time. My name is Maria O'Connor. I'm a resident of the borough, actually right down the street, 42 South Brandywine Street. I currently work as an educator at Plymouth White Marsh High School, where I serve as our K-12 department chair, as well as an assistant curriculum and development assistant supervisor and an adjunct professor for our college and high school program for the University of Pittsburgh. Most importantly, I'm a mom and a really proud resident of the Westchester Borough for over 20 years at this point. And I'm living in one of the original Sears kid home down the street. Yes, it was affordable when we purchased, but I feel lucky to raise my kids in this borough. And I feel lucky to raise them as Boulder kids. And I would love nothing more than to have them as my neighbor down the street. I can attest that this isn't your typical kids screaming, diaper smelling, unsupervised daycare. This is a learning community, enriching the lives of potty trained, very curious and inquisitive little minds. These kids frequent the local shops, learning how the mail works, visiting your borough senior communities, and baking with Yuri over on Church Street. The learning experience my child is lucky to receive from these teachers is unmatched, and I want to share it with the rest of my neighbors. Allowing this location would create additional space to enhance and build upon the experience of my kid and the future kids in this borough, but it will also align directly with the borough values of community, in keeping with the climate and the culture we wish to see come to the borough, and not another bubble tea or a vape shop. Early childhood education is important, many times underappreciated. That's backed by data, and as a former elementary educator of 8 years, you can tell the kids who have had that foundation prior to coming to me. I'm confident that Boulder can fill that void for this community, and I thank you very much for your time tonight and for the level of time and consideration everybody is putting behind this. And it's also Teacher Appreciation Week, so let's give it up for these 2 women who are an extension of my family now. Not to mention I have been through a couple of different daycares and landed at this spot for how safe I feel. And before I close, because I'm here for my little guy right now, these kids play on your playgrounds, they walk your streets, and they are the future of your community. So I'm here for this little man right here who loves that splash park and the frogs down on Matlack Street. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Tate. There's only 4 people in this world I would publicly speak for. 2 of them are right here. The other 2 are my parents. And that's because they have truly become family to me in summer of 2020 when our son's preschool did not reopen. It was very stressful. And it turned out to be the biggest blessing because it led us serendipitously to find Lauren and Terry through Facebook Westchester Moms Group. I live outside of the borough. I live actually closer to Glen Mills, technically in Westchester. And before my son started attending Boulder Kids, I hardly ever came into the borough. I did most of my stuff in Glen Mills, Chadds Ford. Since my son has started and actually did 3 years at Boulder, he was in the first class of I think 8 kids in 2020. Lauren and Terry have fostered such a sense of community in our kids that has, trickled onto the parents. And, when it's Friday night and we ask our kids what they want to do, they want to go to Jack's Corner. They want to go to, get pizza. They want to go to Opa. When I'm thinking of, I have a birthday party, let's get a cake from Yories because they support Boulder Kids. When I need a party, let's get catering from Carlino's. It has brought our, free time into the borough. And to add on what to Bryn said, I feel like there's a gap in the market for daycares and preschool centers. For working parents, you either have a half-day preschool or you have extremely expensive daycares. And I don't want to pay for 11 hours of care because I don't need that. Thankfully, I work from home. My husband works from home. We can, tag team and our schedule so that 6 hours of childcare is what we need to be able to both work full time. So having, my kids go to Boulder Kids while we work and knowing that they're in the best of hands has been such a blessing. And I think for the 10 kids that will go to this school, hopefully, it's an investment in their future and Westchester's future. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've heard a lot of pro Boulder Kids and the South Brandywine. In the interest of time, if there's anyone else that has an opinion that's differing from what we've already heard, I'll ask for you guys to come up.
Good evening. My name is Finton McHugh. I represent Maddie Siegfried. I'm an attorney in media. Maddie lives at 432 West Market Street and 431 Wollerton Street. She's here with me tonight with her mom and a number of neighbors who are also opposed to the application. Just first, I want to address, and I'm sure you're aware, but I think there are many who are not aware. This is not a referendum, obviously, on daycares or on Boulder Kids. This is a zoning issue on 1 South Brandywine. That's a zoning application, and that motion is whether to send the solicitor. So while we appreciate the comments, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are important interests at stake here, factually and legally. And we really want the borough to not only send the solicitor, but send the solicitor in opposition. The interests at stake, by the way, Maddie not only owns the 2 properties that are neighboring to this proposed use, but she also owns the private driveway that's within her deeded lines. So she's the owner of the driveway. And there's a lot at stake here. Just looking at the ordinance in section 810, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but just to adjust the facts, it talks about parking and traffic. And there's no proposed parking for this application. Again, this is not against kids. This is against the fact that we're trying to put a commercial use on a residential property with no proposed parking. So all of the parking that's going to go on here is going to go on to public street. So we're asking the public to basically, and the borough, it's your property, to fund the parking and to provide the parking for this commercial private enterprise. So that has implications not only for this use, but for other uses and other applications that might come before the borough. Just on specifically on this property, you're talking about 2 staff members. You're talking about drop-offs and pickups for 10 children, in addition to the existing residence that's there. That is, they might say it's not a lot of traffic, but it is a lot of traffic to my client and to the other neighbors. We're not convinced that the driveway is not going to be blocked. If it's raining and there's people double parked, first of all, they're going to double park and they're going to block the driveway. We're convinced of that fact. I don't think there's going to be a way to stop it. Regarding noise, which is also in the ordinance, there's a proposal for an outdoor play area. It's 10 kids in a 9x30 area. It sounds like NIMBYism, but would you want that directly outside your kitchen window? I'm not sure if you would. So these are, again, we're talking about a residential property. It's been used residentially for more than 20 years. The ordinance talks about air pollution. We're not talking about necessarily air pollution, but smell. And I know that they're saying there's not going to be diapers, but we don't know that to be true, again. We also don't know that trash for 10 kids and 2 staff are going to be the same as a residential use that's there today. The trash is also being put in the back, which faces, again, Maddie's windows, 9.8 feet from her property line. Safety. There's a fenced-in play area that's being proposed on a slope. We don't know. It's hard to believe where that play area is going to be, but it's also, I'd note, it's in the front yards. You're also dealing with an application that deals with a factual/legal issue. Do we want, as a borough, to have commercial use in front yards? It's a corner property. There's a front yard there. I know the engineer measured it and said it was 9.8 feet, but they're measuring from the building line. They're not including the 9 feet that basically almost that entire area is being used by the play area. So we're having the front yards of residential properties being used for commercial purposes. That's an implication. That has implication for not only this application, but other ones. The engineer also noted that having that fenced area along the public sidewalk is what he called it is not a safe choice. I don't know how high the fence is going to be, but if you have kids there next to a public sidewalk, there's a safety concern. That deals with the children, not just the neighbors. Lot coverage, this is a small lot, as small as a lot you can possibly imagine to have these 2 buildings on already. And the remaining ground on the lot is the slope. So this is a already maxed out lot. And we think that the intensity of the use here is just not justified. We're not against kids. We're not against daycares. We're not against Boulder kids. We're just saying that this is an overpacked lot. And it just, again, we're talking about the zoning on 1 South Brandywine. We think we have a good point that it just doesn't belong here. The legal issues, and that's really, I think what Mr. Flynn was saying is that they want to make sure that you have your esteemed counsel there who has experience with these issues to address them. But again, we think it's not only just having the solicitor there, but having opposition there, because again, you have a number of important legal issues that would have precedent on other uses. There's on this application to be more than one principal use. You'd have a residential use and a commercial use on one property. There's a legal question about abandonment of nonconforming use. The applicant is asking that we look, and they're calling it the prior use, but the prior use is from the 90s. Or at best, early 2000s, 2002 era. So we're stretching to say that we're going to have a non-abandonment of a non-conforming use, but we're going to stretch that over 20 years. So if the zoning hearing board agrees with that, you can reach back on other properties. So I think that's an important legal question that should not only be looked at by the borough, but should be opposed by the borough, because you're going to have that on other properties. It also involves, what is a change of use? They're using a broad stroke to say that this is just a commercial use. Therefore, it's the same as that commercial use that was from what I understand, a one-man operation in a print shop from over 20 years ago. Is everything commercial? Is daycare something different than commercial? Those are important issues that I'm sure the borough is going to see again. And also the use about the question about the use of the front yards for commercial purposes that I mentioned about, and the use of public parking, public parks for private purposes. There's a lot of important borough issues here that are at stake, and we would respectfully request that the solicitor be sent in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, Woody. Oh, yeah.
My name's Woody Lathbury. I live on South Matlack Street. I retired about 8 years ago, and since then, I've been working part-time at 419 West Market Street, which is an industrial facility. I years ago used to have blueprints made by Mr. Owens, who used to own the property that's in question, and that whole area is basically industrial. We routinely block the alley to offload equipment. Now, this is the alley behind us. There's a large electrical substation directly across, right at the corner of Brandywine and Market Street. I mean, there's a lot going on down there. It's hard to imagine that a daycare center is going to make much of a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to put that down as you're for it.
I am Matt Redding. I live in 430 West Market Street. Lived there since January 2017. Since then, the building on the property has not been used in any material purpose from what I can say, from what I could sell. My concerns relate to the change in dynamics with respect to that property. Based on my usage, my daughter's usage of the walkways and everything around it, the increased traffic that we're going to experience by virtue of the business on the property, the traffic that would be predominantly during peak hours, peak traffic hours for West Market Street, just pulling out into the street right now as it is already a problem, but with the additional constant traffic on a daily basis during those peak times, it adds to the concern relating to the traffic and the usage of the area. Concerns regarding the use of the private drive, both with respect to what's being proposed and what's going to happen in actuality. We've received promises I've heard about non-use. We haven't seen plans with respect to non-use of that private drive. I have concerns regarding potential liability with respect to the use of the private drive by them or by the daycare, or with respect to using that location or that egress for purposes of maintaining a trash pad or the ADA compliant ramp that they're proposing on their plan. The applicant mentioned that they've been forthcoming with respect to the traffic analysis and everything else, but the traffic analysis provides comparison against what the business was operating there 20 years ago and not for 20 years. They don't mention in that report at all that the last time that it was used in that substantial purpose was from 2004 or before then. So ever since I've been there, it's been vacant or not used in any material purpose. And then the addition of this use that's being proposed, in addition to the primary dwelling that's also on the premises, just adds concerns from a safety, a use, a noise, a material perspective from my standpoint. So I would vote in opposition to the daycare center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and just after you speak, just if anyone has anything new to add after this gentleman, feel free to come up. If it's a reiteration of what we've already heard, as it is after 8 and we still have a finance committee meeting and my dog is going to go to the bathroom on her floor. So yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Chris Reitman. I'm an engineer. I live at 426 West Market Street, which is just down there. I've examined the property pretty carefully. I've looked through the plans that have been put out there. I had 3 kids who went to daycare in the borough of Westchester primarily. That isn't somewhere I would send my child for daycare. It's a very small property with a building at the top of the hill. I understand they're looking at a play area on a significantly sloped area on the front yard. None of that sounds good. And they're going to have to build a fence directly along West Market Street, which again, it's not going to add to the appeal of the area. I think a daycare is very different than a tattoo parlor. 17 of them in the borough. They're in a single building. They don't need any outside area. They're not interacting so much with the community. To me, a daycare there would be scary. So I'm opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, any new information? All right. So, sure. Yes.
Hi, I'm Terry Skelly, and I am one of the owners of Boulder Kids. And I think one of the things that we are addressing tonight is low-income housing, and you're looking for that. We're looking for parks to be fixed. How are we doing this with all older people who have a mindset already set? When we have children here who are now community members, okay, who play with the children at the Chester County Intermediate Unit, at that care center, okay? They understand that some of those children are running around without shoes, and our children are going home asking if those children can have shoes. These are the children that are going to care about housing, okay? They're going to care about that open space in your community. And if it's a big deal about having a playground in front, maybe we can change it. Maybe we can work together. Maybe like this is what we show the kids. Be a community, work together. Let's not oppose each other, but how can we help each other? Okay. We have children that need things, okay, that are being kicked out of the care center, okay, and are somewhere else. We went and found them, okay? And we made sure that they're still being taken care of, even though they're not our neighbors. We understand who our neighbors are, and we want to take care of them. And I'm sorry that I'm getting upset about this, but this is where your future is. And it's not, and they're not going to, and I invite you to come to the school and meet these children, okay? They don't run around town. They would not be welcome inside of anyone's establishment. I understand. Sorry. I'm so used to being a teacher and turning to my audience. I am so sorry. Putting my back to somebody feels rude. I'm so sorry. But I just want you to understand that, we have to consider our future. And one of the things that we do teach our children also is, yes, there are rules and we follow rules that are very important. Stop at a red light because that can hurt you. But there's some things that if you can change it, maybe we can change the world. Okay, maybe you can make a difference. Darts.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Yeah, come on up. Yeah, we got to let everybody, yeah.
Seriously, and I just want you to know, you know me already. My name's Marion Kofelt. I am the president of Hildebrand Muse HOA. Guys, I respect what you do. I owned a daycare, so I love hearing what you're doing. We just don't think you've got a good spot. You've got a very narrow back that is no more than 2 feet wide. You have a front yard that's on a slope, and you don't even own the last 3 feet because there's markers already. I just don't know how that's fair to children. That's all we're saying. We appreciate a quality daycare. We appreciate I've gone up to your place to see it. You have 5 parking spots. You've got a great facility where you're at. You're in a prime location for what you're doing. I just don't think that's where we're at. Shared spots. I just think it's important that you understand that we're not against you guys. We just don't think where you're looking is good for you. There's plenty of commercial that's back on Gay that looks like it's open. That might be a perfect opportunity for you guys. We're not against them, and don't get the idea that we are. We just don't think it's proper, and we're worried about how it's going to affect our facilities. That's
Okay. All right. Thank you as well. All right. We're good. Got everybody in? All right. Thank you all for your opinions and your thoughts. And as as I ran for Borough Council, my goal is always to listen to everybody as best I can. I know we're kind of cutting you off a little bit, but I think we got everybody's point of view. So thank you all for coming to the table with that. That said, this is an action item. I think we have talked a little bit about our thoughts on what our recommendation is going to be. I'll start again. My recommendation still stands that it's okay to let the solicitor go, but with explicit instructions, more so to just kind of guide on what the code is and where things are, not necessarily to oppose the whole plan, but just to be there to help support with the coding and the information, and possibly working with the potential applicants on what can make it better and make it work for the community.
That sounds like to me, we're sending the solicitor to oppose it because what what I want the solicitor to do is go there and represent the borough if Mr. Jennings' proposal is wrong according to borough code. I'm only care about the code and the ordinances. The daycare is fine if they want to build a daycare, but it has to fit within inside zoning and the ordinances and our resolutions. If it doesn't fit, somebody said you must quit. But
No.
but the fact of the matter is I don't want our solicitor going there sitting on her thumb and not speaking out when she knows blatantly something's wrong and it's not being adhered to our zones.
I
Wow.
have to repeat myself. What I said stand.
Oh,
Okay, so. Yep.
again.
So just to be absolutely clear for the record's purposes and the meeting minutes, the borough will not be present for purposes of opposing our application and appeal, correct?
That's incorrect.
Well, no, my goal, if I have to change my vote, because Bernie, that's your interpretation, then I'll say no solicitor. If,
Then
so,
say no solicitor then.
then no solicitor. Not for me. If the oh, there it is. If the interpretation is that we're sending a solicitor to oppose it, then I will say no solicitor. If the interpretation is to send the solicitor to support and to help work with the applicants on making this work for our community, then I'm okay with that. But if we're sending someone to oppose, then I'm going to say don't send anyone at all.
Right. No solicitor.
Okay.
You know, I just, excuse me, because I saw on the agenda, the motion, the decision to be made was whether to send the solicitor. And I know that there's text being added on to that, but I think it's just a yes or no. If I could respectfully suggest that, you know, the decision is only whether, yes or no, are we sending the solicitor? Not necessarily to oppose. I know I advocated for that and Ryan did not. But you know, if anything, there should be a vote, yes or no, to send the solicitor.
And I think that's where we landed, 2-1, no solicitor. Thank you. Now, and that's our recommendation. Please know that's our recommendation. That'll go to Borough Council work session next, like this, you know, yeah. Oh, that's me. Next one. Motion to direct solicitor to draft zoning motion to consider attendance of solicitor for zoning hearing considering proposal for new garage at 800 North New Street.
This is a much less complex application. The applicant was originally approved back in 2021 for a variance to construct a garage on his property. This was during COVID. The granted decision expired on March 8th, 2022. He is now applying for the same variance. There are minimal changes to the plan. He's looking to build a 3-car garage over current impervious surface, and now he's adding 38 square feet of the garage over, again, current impervious surface.
No.
Yes.
Thank you.
So 2-1, no. Okay. D, motion to direct solicitor to draft zoning amendment for off-street parking. Jim, you're back up.
Again, the parking for the multifamily, it exists within the ordinance. We're making a recommendation to amend the existing ordinance. We do believe there's language presently in under 112-603 that says the number of off-street parking spaces provided will be determined by the borough based on information supplied by the applicant and such information and studies as the borough shall determine relevant. So it does give the flexibility regardless of the, I should have backed up. The present requirement is that there is a Institute of Transportation Engineer parking generation report that's generated on each property. That provides a recommended number of parking spaces, especially for these multifamily. Sometimes that's 0.8 cars per unit, that type of stuff, 0.9 cars. So what we're recommending is that we have a correlation for these big multifamily buildings between the dwelling units, the bedrooms, and the parked cars. When the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Report was decided as the means to determine the parking, that was prior to Borough Council removing street permit parking for those buildings. So to date, we have not seen a building that has generated the parking count this way, been built and been occupied to see what the impact is. On top of that, we've removed the ability for residents of those buildings to have street parking. That means parking, any cars have to be accommodated on the property or you're leasing space from the borough in one of the structured parking garages or so on. Our recommendation is to have a 1 car per bedroom, 1 car, 1 bedroom, 1 car, 2 bedrooms, 2 cars, and so on. In addition to that, we're asking that accessible parking spaces be met per code requirements, as well as some guest parking spaces be provided, as well as an off-street loading zone. So moving vans, Amazon parking, DoorDash, anything that might happen rather than stopping out in streets. So we can look at a couple of developments that have happened. 330 Market Street does look adequately parked. It does meet it. 410 South High Street, it does not meet this requirement. So they're asking for some spaces to be taken off of Dean Street for loading, unloading, as well as the parking count. One of the other pieces we did want to add was no stacked parking. All right, they're calling them bonus spaces at 410. So even though they're in the count, it's car bumper to bumper, 2 cars deep. So unless they both happen to be somebody in a 2-bedroom or good drivers, it's that's presently being proposed on that building. So Planning Commission asked to move this thing forward. Again, I do think there's language presently within zoning that allows you to kind of set a number based on your determination. That's what the present zoning says.
Any questions? No? I'm good to move this forward for actioning this month.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. We all agree on this one. Yay. No one's here to see it anymore. All right. These are also hopefully easy ones. Approve April 2024 HARB submission recommendations.
Okay, the first one is for 130 West Prescott Alley, registered carriage house, exterior alterations. You do have the recommendations from HARB. I can review them if need to. And there was no objections from the applicant.
Keep going.
Okay. Next one is 200 North Church Street. An awning sign. There are recommendations from HARB, and again, no objections from the applicant.
Okay.
Next is 142 East Market Street, a new dining platform and barrier. The board is recommending an approval of a certificate of appropriateness with some clarifications, and there's no objections from the applicant. And finally, we have 202 North Church Street, which is a roof replacement. They are recommending approval of the certificate of appropriateness with clarifications, and there is no objections from the applicant on those clarifications.
Okay, anyone against any of these? We're 3-0 for recommending to move forward? Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to approve April 2024 Smart Growth Committee meeting minutes. We're good? 3-0. Any other business? All right, then this meeting is adjourned at 8:21.